Hey everyone, I'm Mariana, this is Impression Blend, and today we are doing another tier list. When I asked you for tier list topic suggestions on Instagram, Final Girls was one of those that came up pretty often. It was one of the most popular suggestions, and it's one of my favorite horror tropes in general, so this video was bound to happen. If you are new to horror and you don't know what a final girl is, the simplest definition is that it is a term used to describe the last girl standing in a horror film, particularly in slashers. This was initially in reference to slasher horror, so the last girl who survives, who fights the villain, and against all odds, she defeats him. That is your final girl. Obviously, as time went on and horror as a genre transformed and evolved, the final girl evolved as well, and you will see this in the more recent final girls that I mentioned today. They are a little bit different from your classic final girl that you would find in Friday the 13th movies or Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween. But the essence of the character still remains the same. She is the last girl standing, she's the final survivor, and I have 19 of them to rank today, so let's get this started. First of all, let's go through the tiers really quickly. Just like last time, I have 5 tiers for you to rank all these final girls. And just like last time, I came up with my own titles for these tiers, just for a little bit of extra fun. So the first one at the top here is Scream Queen. I just had to go for that one as my top tier, and this is reserved for the iconic, the most amazing final girls that will stay with us for years to come. After that, I have a worthy survivor, and those are the girls who absolutely deserve to be mentioned as some of the best final girls out there. They're smart, they're resourceful, they know what they're doing, they're interesting characters. They might not be as iconic as the Scream Queens, but they are still really, really great. The next tier is deserves a sequel. These final girls are pretty good. They're not bad by any means. They are definitely worth watching and worth rooting for, but they just lack a little bit of something. I wouldn't mind seeing them in another movie and see if their character would develop, but as is from movie number 1, and by the way, I'm only talking about singular movies and not the entire franchises here for these characters. So from the first movie, maybe they're kind of middle of the road, but still not bad. Now, the next one is reserved for the ones who I think would go to the creepy basement. If you know horror films, you know that you, under no circumstances, should go to the creepy basement. That is just a very silly mistake to make and never leads to anything good. It's about as bad as splitting up to investigate. Just don't do it. It's bad. It's never going to end well for you. So this tier is obviously for the final girls who make these silly mistakes and still somehow survive. Maybe they redeem themselves, maybe they're not all that bad, but they're definitely not the greatest person to have on your team, and for the most part, they probably got lucky. As for the bottom tier, this one speaks for itself. How did you even survive? These final girls, I don't know how they're on this list to begin with, because by all rules of logic, they should have been dead. They did not do well, they did not contribute, they absolutely just got lucky or got saved or something among those lines. I don't like them, I don't think they did well, and I have no idea how they survived. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the actual final girls. And by the way, most of these are suggested by you. I asked you guys on Instagram, who are your favorite final girls and who are your least favorite final girls? And so I got a bunch of suggestions from you. There's only one that nobody suggested that I put on this list because I feel like it's unfair nobody brought her up, but I'll tell you when we get there. Now, we are going to start with the classic, and I'm talking about Nancy from A Nightmare on Elm Street. This one was kind of interesting because some people brought her up as the favorite, and then about the equal amount of people brought her up as the least favorite. So clearly a very divisive final girl. For me personally, I think Nancy is all right. As iconic as A Nightmare on Elm Street is, I just don't think Nancy is what makes this film as good as it is. And I adore Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger, of course, the amazing, memorable villain that has stayed with us for years and years. And the idea behind him is what makes this film and what makes this franchise. There are so many sequels to it. People cannot get enough of him. Even when the movies are not great, they're still there to see Freddy because he's that good. Nancy, on the other hand, I don't think she's bad. I don't think she's awful. She's not doing much for me, and I don't think she is that interesting. Part of it is that she is a teenager and she does what she can, but personally, for me, she's a really good candidate for deserves a sequel. I don't think she's that memorable. I don't think she does enough to be considered a worthy survivor, even though what she's facing is pretty intense. But I also don't think she's awful. I don't think she is just lucky to survive. I think she does what she can as a teenager. So she's going middle of the road. Deserves a sequel. Now, next up, we have a real Scream Queen. I'm not even going to make this suspenseful because we're talking about the one and only Sidney Prescott from Scream. She is one of my favorites. I'm a little bit biased because I love Scream. It's one of my favorite films overall. And she was a big favorite for you guys as well because she was going neck to neck with another iconic final girl, but that other girl won. We will get her later. Sidney got second place, but she is going right to the Scream Queen tier because she is fantastic. I love her as a character. She has really good growth. She is not someone who gives up easily. She is working for her ending, and she gets even more interesting in the sequels. We're not talking about the sequels, we're just talking about the original Scream, but even in that first movie, I think she is great and she's incredibly memorable. Now, let's switch things up a little bit. Let's go a little bit more modern, and one of your other favorites turned out to be Erin from You're Next, which I'm a little bit surprised about, but when I thought about it, it makes sense because Erin is somebody who is really easy to root for. She is a character who you want to survive. You want her to win. She is resourceful. She is smart. She does not give up. She has so many ideas about how to get out of the situation. She does not lose her cool. She's trying to get through this. She's trying to help other people. I mean, what's not to like? And as a bonus, when someone starts setting traps and trying to outsmart the killer instead of just hiding and getting lucky, that immediately puts them higher on my list. For me, she's going to be a worthy survivor. I don't think she's quite iconic enough to be a Scream Queen. I think maybe if they made a sequel and really elevated her character just a little bit more, I think she could potentially get there because she is really smart and really interesting. But as is, I think she's right there at the top, but not quite Scream Queen. So, a worthy survivor. Next, we have Dana from Cabin in the Woods. And this was another one of those final girls who landed in best and in worst for you guys. It seems like she's a little bit divisive. I can understand why. I think Dana is somebody who is not the most active final girl, at least for a while. She gets there, but her character eventually gets more interesting and she is pretty likable in general, just the way that the actress plays her. So I understand where this conflict is coming from. Now, you guys know I am a big fan of Cabin in the Woods. It's one of my favorite horror films. It's one of my favorite comedies. I adore that film and I have watched it so many times. So I am a little bit biased on this one. I really don't want to put her in a deserves a sequel category, but I might have to. I just feel like by the end of the film, she's definitely in the worthy survivor category. But for the majority of it, she's somebody who needs a little bit more development, who needs to be a little bit more present. And she's not the most memorable character of that movie. So I think I'm going to put her in Deserves a Sequel, even though I absolutely adore the film and it's a 10 out of 10 film for me. That's where she's going. I'm not happy about it, but I do have to admit that she's kind of middle of the road as far as Final Girls go. Now, this next one here is someone I would not have thought of, but you guys recommended her. She was a favorite for a few people, and I totally agree. She is absolutely a Final Girl, and that is Maddie from Hush. This is a very interesting case because Maddie has an added complication to her situation because she is deaf. And that, of course, makes things a little bit difficult for her because she literally cannot hear the home invader that she's trying to fight off. So she has that going, but also despite that, she is incredibly badass. She is a fighter. She is resourceful. This word is going to come up a lot in this video because that is the criteria I am absolutely looking at. When I was watching that movie, I thought this is someone who did everything she could. She absolutely deserves to survive, and for that she is going into the worthy survivor category. I don't know, maybe she does deserve to be a scream queen. She is someone who you don't see on screen often at all, and I'm not gonna lie, if they made a sequel to Hush with her again, I would absolutely watch it. I would hope that it is good, at least as good as the original, if not better. I think I'm going to leave her in a worthy survivor category and just reserve Scream Queens for my absolute favorites. That's where we're gonna go. Now let's go back to the classics. And this one surprised me a little bit because I expected a lot more people to mention Laurie from Halloween as their favorite. And I only got a few of you who mentioned her as a favorite, and even a couple who said she was your least favorite. So that is something that I found interesting. I am personally a big fan of Jamie Lee Curtis, but as far as Laurie goes, I don't think she is amazing. I'm probably about to raise some eyebrows here, but I have to be honest. I only watched Halloween for the first time maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Somehow I have skipped it my entire life. And I was very underwhelmed, even though I knew this is a classic and it probably is not as impactful watching it the first time now as it would have been back when it first came out, but I was still underwhelmed. It's definitely not my favorite horror film, and it's far from my favorite horror franchise. I didn't watch very far into the franchise either, if I'm being honest. Something about her does make her memorable though, so I'm going to go with Deserves a Sequel again. I feel like this is going to be a very popular category for me today. She makes some silly mistakes, I'm not going to lie, but it's not that bad. And I think she is memorable in a way, and a lot of that is because it's Jamie Lee Curtis. So going for Deserves a Sequel, which she definitely got. Now this next one is apparently the most hated Final Girl. I was honestly a little bit surprised how often her name came up as a least favorite from you guys. But Julie from I Know What You Did Last Summer is the absolute way ahead of everybody else winner of least favorite Final Girl of all time. I'm sad for Julie a little bit. I don't know why people hate her that much. Yes, she doesn't have the most amazing character, I'm not going to lie. And I think that's a big part of it. I think she's just a little bit annoying or a lot annoying, depends on who you ask. but I don't think she's completely useless. I think there are way worse final girls out there, but I kind of understand where you guys are coming from. For me, this is definitely going to be a went to the creepy basement category. I would not put her in How Did You Even Survive because like I said, I think there are worse options out there. But she's definitely someone who would go to investigate the creepy basement and split up from everybody and make silly mistakes. Next is someone who I think is worse than Julie and is actually one of my least favorite final girls of all time. And this is one of my least favorite horror franchises of all time. So there's a lot of least favorite going on here. This is Alice from Friday the 13th. Please don't hate me, but I'm just not a big fan of Friday the 13th, the first film, or the rest of the franchise, and Jason. It's not my thing. So I think Alice is actually pretty bad. I think Alice is one that you would definitely look at and question, how did she even make it through the first film? Because she just doesn't do all that much. She's just kind of there and somehow she defeats the villain. Spoilers for Friday the 13th, I guess. But it's been out for a while. But yeah, I'm not a fan of Alice. I don't think she does nearly enough to be even considered a worthy final girl. She's not even all that memorable either. When people were mentioning her as the least favorite, I kind of had to look up what even happened there to remind myself, because she's just very bland and she is not a lot of fun. So how did you even survive, Alice? How did you do it? Because you didn't do much. Now, this next one is another one that I wouldn't have thought of myself because she's not the most obvious final girl in the world, but I do agree she fits the type, and that is Thomasin from The Witch. So Thomasin, I guess, is our designated A24 final girl. And by the way, if you haven't seen my A24 horror tier list, I will of course link it right here as well as in the info box below. You can check that out. But Thomasin is absolutely a worthy survivor. And what I like about Thomasin is that she keeps standing up for herself. She is there saying, no, I did not do anything wrong. And when she needs to step up, she does step up. I do think she is great. As much as I love The Witch, I don't think I could put her as a Scream Queen because of the ending of that film. She kind of finds her own way out of the situation after everything goes down. I'm being very vague here, obviously, for those of you who haven't seen the film, but if you haven't seen The Witch, go watch it. It's amazing. But yeah, I think she deserves the title and she deserves to survive, and she should be proud to call herself a final girl. Another one I wouldn't have thought of by myself is Adelaide from Us. She is definitely a very interesting character. Once again, I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a twist to her character that really elevates her and makes her a lot more interesting. I would absolutely watch a sequel to Us and watch her character again. I don't think that would necessarily happen with the way things ended, but I think she is really good and borderline iconic. Part of it is because of the twist of the film and how everything has turned out. So I'm going to put Adelaide once again to the worthy survivor category. You cannot say that she didn't fight for her dear life in this film, because she absolutely did. Actually, is she a Scream Queen? I don't know. She might be, because who else is like her? I keep thinking of the movie's twist because it really does matter in her case, and it matters who she faces. You know what? I think she does deserve to be a Scream Queen, and I'm going to put her in that category. Plus, Lupita's performance is amazing, and she is, as always, fantastic in this film and in this role. Both roles that she plays. Next, we have Sally from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She is one of the most famous final girls, but oh my god, I think she is awful. And it pains me to say this because I love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film, for some reason, has always stuck with me, and every time I see it, I just find it to be very different from everything. I'm fascinated by the backstory of this film, by how it got made, but the film itself and the idea of it is just so disturbing to me. But I think Sally is not the best character, and I think as a final girl, she is really, really bad. She's probably my least favorite final girl out there. All she does is screams and runs and flails. That's it. That's Sally's character for you. I'm sorry if you love Sally, and I know the actress has been through a lot filming this film. It's been kind of an awful experience for her, but we're talking about the writing and the filmmaking in particular, and Sally just, no, I'm sorry. She survived literally by accident, in my opinion. So that's where she's going. How did you even survive, Sally? Now, from my least favorite to my favorite final girl of all time, one of my favorite characters of all time, and one of my favorite films of all time, and someone most of you have voted as the best final girl, and that is, of course, Ellen Ripley from Alien. Aliens. We're only talking about Alien, but I do have to say that in Aliens, she's even more of a badass. Of course, this is a Scream Queen. She is an icon. I want to be Ellen Ripley when I grow up because she is that badass, and there is absolutely no way I could put her anywhere else other than the top tier. I don't even need to say anything. I mean, do I need to explain why Ellen Ripley is fantastic? I don't think so. She's an icon. Moving on. Next up, I have Jay in It Follows, and Jay is definitely one of those more updated final girls, and I do think It Follows is a bit of a supernatural slasher. There are a lot of classic slasher elements to this film, and her character in particular definitely fits the type, but there's a little bit of a spin on that final girl trope. So I really do like Jay. I don't think she is flawless. I think she makes some silly decisions, but she recovers and she comes out on top. You know what I mean. And I think she's absolutely a worthy survivor, so we're going to put her there. I think she has earned that spot. Next up, I have Sarah from The Descent. This one is interesting because Sarah has been through a lot in her life. Like within a few minutes of this film, you already know how much Sarah has been through. And then on top of that, she is involved in the mess that is the rest of The Descent. I mean, how can you not root for Sarah? If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of The Descent in general, and I've seen that movie quite a few times. I love it. It is so uncomfortable. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. But Sarah, I think, is an awesome final girl. She fights for her life. There are some iconic shots of her in that film. The Descent itself is not the most famous horror film out there. It's still kind of underappreciated, even though it is known in the horror community. I've talked to so many people who have not seen this movie for some reason. What are you guys doing? You should watch it. Anyways, Sarah is great. Not only is she fighting the natural elements of this film, then she's fighting the supernatural elements of this film, and there is a bonus kind of villain that you find out about eventually. Don't want to spoil, but there is someone else in the group who makes it even more difficult for her. Is she a Scream Queen? I think so. She's amazing. So I'm going to put her there. I know some of you might disagree, but I think she's really, really excellent as a character, as a final girl. She's a fighter. She's everything. I need people to give her more love. Next up, I have Tree from Happy Death Day. And a lot of people like this movie and its sequel and this character, and I'm just not one of them. It's hard for me to separate the character from the movie in this case too, because they are so intertwined. The concept of the film, the time loop horror film, and the way her character develops, I just don't like her. And I think people give her too much credit. She has so many chances to survive and to figure out who her killer is, and she dies so many times, and it comes down to her being an absolute jerk for the majority of this film. I don't like her. And she makes so many mistakes, even though she eventually figures things out. I think that it's not fair that she got so many chances. Everybody else got one. She got, I don't even know how many. So she's went to the creepy basement category because by the time she got her life together, she has died so many times and she kind of needs a lot of help. Sorry, I know you guys like her, but just no. Then I have Mia from the Evil Dead remake. And this one, I'm not going to lie, I considered not including at all because it's been so long since I've seen this film. I had to remind myself what even went down. I remembered it very generally. But after I did, I came to the conclusion that Mia is all right. I think there's an interesting twist to her character, and I think by the end of the film, she's a lot more interesting than she is for the majority of the film, because for most of the film, she kind of fulfills a purpose that this film needs her to fulfill. So she doesn't become all that interesting until much, much later. However, I do think she's someone who it would be interesting to explore further, and I think she has a lot of potential. So, as you have suspected, she is going into the deserves a sequel category. That's where I'm putting her because this is my middle of the road tier, and for me personally, she's very middle of the road. Next up, we have Amber from Green Room. I guess that's another A24 film. I lied. Thomasin is not the only A24 person on this list. And Amber is interesting because she is kind of an anti-hero who we warm up to, who becomes someone we root for when we don't root for her in the beginning because we don't like her. She doesn't seem all that great. But as far as her final girl skills go, I think she is really, really good. I think she knows what she's doing. I think she knows when she needs to work together with people and when she needs to take charge. She is obviously a fighter. She's someone who really grows on you throughout the film, but not in the way where she's boring the entire time and then by the end suddenly she gets interesting. She is progressively more interesting and she participates a lot. So I'm actually going to put her in the worthy survivor category. And yes, once again, I am a big fan of Green Room. I don't think it's possible to separate my love for the film from the characters in this film, but I do think she's genuinely interesting. And I don't think there's anybody on this list who is actually an anti-hero the way that she is. Now, this next one is someone nobody has mentioned, and I am so surprised nobody brought up Michelle from 10 Cloverfield Lane. She is absolutely a final girl just as much as all of these more modern final girls are, and she is great. She is not someone who gives up. She's once again resourceful. She's smart. She plays the game when she needs to, but she always knows what her goals are. She doesn't make many mistakes, but when she does make them, she learns from them. I think she is awesome. I would love to see another film with her. I am putting her as a worthy survivor. I think she's just one step away from being iconic and being that Scream Queen. If we got to see her in the sequel and she really stepped up one more time, I think she would absolutely deserve that Scream Queen status. But as is, I'm going with a worthy survivor. Finally, last but certainly not least, is Grace from Ready or Not. I am such a fan of Ready or Not. I think it is such a fun film, and I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I've rewatched it. It is so much fun to rewatch, and Grace is a huge reason why she makes this film. I think out of the more recent Final Girls, she is probably my favorite because she is lovable, she's charming, she's funny, she's a fighter, she learns from her mistakes, she starts off naive and she quickly learns that this is not the way to survive. Plus, she's literally up against the people she thought she was going to be with for the rest of her life. She thought they were going to be her family. It turns out they're awful and are out to murder her. So I love Grace, and I am definitely biased on this one, but I think out of the recent Final Girls. She absolutely deserves the title of Scream Queen because she makes the film, because she is the film. If it wasn't for Samara Weaving and her portrayal of this character, the film would not be even half as entertaining and half as awesome as it is. So, you may disagree. I don't think you should. But Samara Weaving as Grace is absolutely a Scream Queen. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments who your favorite Final Girl is and who your least favorite Final Girl is. I would love to know if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings. And if you really disagree on some of these, let's talk in the comments below. Or, of course, if I missed somebody, let me know. As always, a big thank you to all my patrons who are supporting me on Patreon, with an extra special thank you to the patrons whose names are on the screen right now. But of course, a huge thank you to everyone who has made it to the end of this video. I appreciate every single one of you. If you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos, follow me on social media if you would like. I will have all of those links in the info box below, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!